y'all pages as we get started. Okay, ladies. Okay. Got it. All right. All right. So how we're gonna begin, we're gonna introduce ourselves, say our pronouns, and you can say a little something, and then we'll start our questions, and I will begin. My name is Regina Livingston. I am the Executive Director and founder of Unspoken Treasure Society, and I'm glad to be here amongst these beautiful ladies today. Tarina.
Hey everybody, how are you? I am Tarina Williams from Norfolk, Virginia. I go by she and her. I am the CEO and founder of the Southeastern Transgender Resource Center. And I am glad to be on the call, and I am ready to talk about it. Let's talk.
Zaria.
Good evening, everyone. I am Zaria. I am the Executive Director and founder of NOMO, which stands for Navigating Omitted Minds Over Time. We are based out of Macon, Georgia, the only Black trans-led organization in the Middle Georgia area, covering 14 counties. And my pronouns are she, her, queen, goddess, and all the things feminine.
Okay, beautiful. Zahara.
Yes, thank you so much, you all sharing space with us today. My name is Sahara Bassett. I hail from the Midwest. I'm the founder and CEO of Life is Work, a Black and Brown trans-led social service advocacy organization. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Zakia.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zakia McKenzie. I am the Executive Director and founder of Nations Foundation out of Richmond, Virginia. And we do an array of things from HIV, STI testing to trans support groups, housing, mobile testing, an array of things. I'm ready for the conversation and very happy to be in space with such a powerful group of women tonight. So thank you, Natalia.
Marissa.
Hey everybody, I am Marissa Miller, pronouns she and they. I am the founder and executive director of Trans Solutions Research and Resource Center. We are located in Indianapolis, Indiana. And also, I think for the purpose of this phone call, I am the senior advisor for NASM located in Atlanta, Georgia, which is an agency that is primarily focused on housing, primarily focused on Black and Brown men. But we are working on integrating trans and diverse services. Appreciate being here.
Tori.
Good evening, everybody. I am Tori Burke. My pronouns are she and her. I am the Transitional Housing Coordinator for Vision for Hope in Atlanta. We not only help people with housing, but we help people change their lives with our 360 program. So we do a array of things. We do putting people in care, to community outreach, to advocacy, also people that are not on site with us here at our transitional home. So we are fortunate and thankful to be a part of this conversation today. Thank you all.
Okay. So the reason we're here is, I don't know if you all have been paying attention to my page or we've had a conversation directly, but I have been campaigning for people that are impacted by HIV. I've just been kind of pushing the narrative of it being so important for people that are impacted by it, just as important as people living with. And the reason I think that's so important is our young community that's growing up, when they go to organizations and they tell them that they can't service them or they can't provide them with housing or assist them if they're not positive. I felt like that message that it was sending was not a good one. And I thought about some of the things that went through my mind as a young woman. And one of the things that I remember thinking about is, maybe if I go out and get HIV positive, then I could receive services. And so that's not good. I didn't do that, but how do we know somebody else won't do that? So that's something that's just really been near and dear to my heart. And I wanted to bring these powerhouses on that does housing, that works with organizations that provide housing and that does it. So I can see from your perspective, am I heading in the direction? Or is it something that, I have a long fight for, in which, of course, we all know everything we have to fight for, being a Black trans woman. So I have a few questions. My first question is, what are the positives versus the negatives about gatekeeping? Let me repeat it again. What are the positives versus the negatives about gatekeeping? One diva, one mic. So, ladies, give each other their respect and let's speak one at a time.
I think that's thank you for the question, first of all, Regina, and thank you for holding space to have conversations about what equitable, I think I hear you saying what equitable housing looks like. Housing that is for everybody. And so I think one of the things that, I don't know that there is a positive word connotation toward gatekeeping. I think the word gatekeeping sort of has a negative connotation to it. I think if you were to ask, who are the key population leaders? I think then that question, I think, would be a person that is in charge, or those persons that has the ability to access services. But I don't think there is any positivity to gatekeeping. Gatekeeping was born out of a poverty model that says there's not enough for everybody. So I'm not going to give you access to this. I'm not going to tell you there's a grant. I'm not going to tell you how to get housing. I'm not going to introduce you to the funder. I'm not going to shake hands. I'm not going to send an email. So gatekeeping in that aspect is really negative because it's way too much work for one person to do. And I think sometimes we get caught up in being the only, and I think that's where gatekeeping comes from, thinking that we are the only ones that can do. And that's my opinion about the word gatekeeping.
If I can kind of add to what Marissa was just saying too, because I do think that, it is a sense of that gatekeeping is something, and I will say that I hate it. I'm just going to say that. But I think that gatekeeping needs to be more of a unified statement, because I feel like that we all have to move together at one point as a unit, and whatever that may be, and those may be different sectors. But when we say gatekeeping, so we have to have somebody, as I always say this, let me just say this. I think that, I'm sorry, somebody's constantly texting to throw me off. I think that somebody's always has to be the chef, and someone has to be the sous chef. And in order for a team to work efficiently, someone has to be the gatekeeper. Someone has to get us through the door. And as we would say as sisters, someone got to go kick the door in for us to get in and do what we need to do. So if we're labeling that as gatekeeping, then someone do have to have the key in order for us to get there. All of us can't bum rush one table and think they're going to listen to everyone talking at one time.
I second that. I think that gatekeeping does have a positive side. However, I do agree, Marissa, that's where it comes from. It comes from the negative. But I think it also has a positive side, because if some of us get in positions where we can invite others to the table, and we actually do that. And so that's the positive side to gatekeeping, because sometimes you can reach back and invite ladies into situations that they would never in a million years be able to get in. So I think that would be the positive side for me. And you're right, Zahara, we all can't be in every table. We all can't be in every arena And that's simply because we fight to be in the places and spaces that we are now, which is why I think it's so important for us to be building our own tables. But that comes with a price as well, so yeah, I agree.
I think it's a positive and a negative.
Mhm.
I do think it is a negative in the sense, like Marissa said, that it comes from a place of not having or putting in the mindset of not having enough. But I also think that Zahara, right? Zahara, okay. What she said was important as well, because I also think that sometimes gatekeeping is in a aspect of making sure that resources are really adequately used in the way they should be. A lot of times people get in the work and it's not for the work. And so there has to be a level of gatekeeping in regards to resources and the way that they're used. So I just think it's a positive and a negative. But I also think that even when you're gatekeeping in a sense where a person may not really be doing the work, put parameters in place, give them like a performance plan and maybe not allocate all those resources at one time, but help them build and see the work. And as the work builds, then allocate more resources. But I just feel like it is a positive and a negative. And I also think it's important, but I also think the way that gatekeeping is done could be changed so that it could be capacity building, skills building, versus hindering someone, maybe not giving them as much and letting them grow into being able to have that full capacity of funding or resources or whatever.
Second, I would just like to say the same thing. So I looked at the definition of gatekeeping, before this panel, and it says gatekeeping is controlling and usually limiting general access to something. That's one definition. And then another definition is when a person, so in this case, for the sake of the conversation, person, organization, or foundation, persons with the resources, takes it upon themselves to decide who does and who does not have access or rights to a community or identity. And so that in itself is where gatekeeping can be negative, because one person should never be controlling an entire pot of money, especially if it's resources for individuals, especially for housing, that need those funds, whether you're living with or without, excuse me, HIV. And it is a positive, just to echo what our sister Zakia said, as Zahara said, controlling it at the same time is definitely important, because you want to make sure that it's actually going to and towards organizations that's actually doing the work and need those funds, and those funds being in place, and a person not withholding funds for whatever reason. So definitely it can be a positive and a negative. It just depends on how you take the word gatekeeping and you utilize it in regards to your organization, and making sure too that other organizations aren't gatekeeping resources as well, because we tend to know that does happen a lot of time when other organizations do have resources, they gatekeep those as well. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Yeah, and if I may interject, I want to add something to the conversation too, because I kind of analyzed the question that you kind of brought forth for us, and it's a question that I don't honestly know how to answer, because doing direct service, right? Being here on site, because I'm on site with the people in the transitional housing program that we run here at Vision for Hope, and so I see the needs of the people firsthand off the ground. And so that is something that's very important to me, because when we see the needs of the people, we understand the needs of the people, right? And I know some of us on the call, some of the ladies, you all can relate to that. But one thing that I've always been perplexed about in our community is people talk about gatekeeping and they always talk about accountability, but it's almost like people get our number and they just say, this is what I don't want, and I'm going to take it to Vision Store and drop it off. But fortunate for us, we see value in everybody in community. We see the need for what is going on in community. And I always say, like, I try to not gatekeep people, but I also say, if your agency don't have dollars to assist people in housing, I want you to be able to still pour into that client by making sure every week, maybe they're having, if they're having difficulties with food and other items, personal hygiene items, I do think that there is a need for us to step in the community. I think gatekeeping is almost like we'll drop somebody off in another service, and then we would also then hold that service accountable and say, oh, well, this service should be doing XYZ and XY this and XY that. But we're not really looking at how are we changing. You know, we have to be more than just a contact and a Rolodex for people. We have to be more than just, I can link you over here, but I'm not following up with you. So I always say, when people say they want to gatekeep or watch or look at what another agency do, I always tell people, take accountability of what your agency do first. You know, that's just how I feel about it. But I didn't want to get off topic, but I'll let y'all go ahead with that.
But I do want us to not have to fit into that word. That word is oppressive. That word is born out of oppression. Gatekeeping is an oppressive word. I want to encourage you to know that's the gatekeeping word. I would love the word influence. I mean, if you are an influencer at a table, I don't think funders are, I don't think gatekeeping is a negative. The connotation of the word was born out of negativity because it's limiting access. I don't want to limit your access. I mean, why would I want to limit your access, or why would I want to control what you get? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't even know that funders are labeled as gatekeepers. Are they labeled as gatekeepers, funders? I know that they gatekeep, and we say that in a negative way, but are they gatekeepers? I mean, I think gatekeeper is the negative. Natalia, you being messy with that word right there.
I'm not being messy.
You're trying to get a mess started.
No. See, I'm learning. See, that's why you have all these powerful voices here. You have voices of knowledge. So at the same time of me giving my advice or the things that I think of these questions, I'm learning. So maybe moving forward, that won't be on my questions.
And
you know, I won't.
I do think funders are gatekeepers because if they were not, they just give us the money. And they wouldn't say do any reports and, none of this stuff. And we need site visits and quarterly reports. So, that's a way of them gatekeeping us for the dollars. You know what I'm saying? And when I spoke about funding aspects because nothing burns me more than to see dollars go to an organization that is not doing the work. When I know that there is another organization who has limited budget and I see you doing the work. So I would rather put those funds there, no shade. But like in the conversation, the context, because Natalia, when you were talking earlier and you were talking about people living with HIV and how that message to those who are negative, what it sends. And I believe that the way you feel and that message is true because it seems like you're telling people, oh, you have really a carte blanche if you're positive. And that's why, like when I created the Aim to Inspire program at my org, it was specifically for people that are LGBTQ, regardless of whether you were living with HIV or not. And simply because lived experience when I was homeless, living in an apartment with 9 people, you know what I'm saying? And I couldn't get access to services and what I had to do. So I just think that the lived experience of LGBTQ people, all people, we are oppressed, we're marginalized, we're discriminated against, and I think that there needs to be support and help for us, whether we are living with or living.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the services around emergency housing, especially around PrEP, is advancing. I'll say here in Illinois it is. We have services for people that's like on PrEP. They help them like with rental assistance, back rent and stuff like that. So I will say it's advancing in some regions, but I think that it takes a lot of advocacy work in those, like especially like down south where majority of you girls are, in regions where it's a little bit more, right wing. you know, I think it takes a lot of building around advocacy, you know, and building up that, you know, that base of just calling on this is what we need for change and showing up. I think that a lot of times within our community too, especially within Black community, that we don't show up like we should when it's time to show up. You know, and that's the conversation that we really should be having, where, you know, when do we pose to show up and how do we get the people to show up to say, yeah, we can always be the ones in the room speaking and saying, this is housing, we need housing. You know, it should not just be for Hopwood people. Hopwood should be a, you know, a program that is fully versed for people who are, you know, who are at risk, people who are taking PrEP. You know, that should be national. It shouldn't just be regional for here in Chicago that we're advocating. This should be something that's offered everywhere, but it takes a lot of advocacy around that as well.
And I also think that, like, we talk about it, but are we, as you know, leaders in the trans community, leaders of organizations who have funding, are we putting our dollars, you know, heavily to that and making that a priority as well? Because, like, you have to create your own table too. You can advocate, but it takes a lot to change these lawmakers' minds who have control and make decisions over our lives. So when you're looking at your budget, you know, really making sure that we're also not only having the conversation, but we are also concentrating dollars from our budget to make those things happen for our community. Because at the end of the day, you know, when I think about back in the day and the reason why I even got in a family, it was why I even lived with 9 people in an apartment, was because that was my community. We was taking care of each other. And we have to continuously have that model to remember to take care of each other. So donate dollars to that. When we get in these general operating fund grants and, you know, big donations, put some of that money to emergency housing, and, you know, so that we can take care of our own until these white folks or people who have control of these dollars really get the picture and see. Because I think stuff is getting ready to get worse for us as trans people, with, you know, them, you know, simply saying that what happened with the shooting at the school, that person was trans. The world is really shifting in a crazy way. So we really need to, like, be vigilant about planning, budgeting, making sure that we allocate funds to make sure we take care of each other.
And I think
Yeah,
it's
well,
about diversifying. Everybody is really back to the same way that it used to be. And I will probably this entire phone call talk about what poverty models look like, especially for agencies that don't understand about diversified funding. If you write for HIV dollars, then let me say something. The folk gonna want their HIV numbers. The folks gonna want you to house HIV people. Is it a shame that they are allocating those dollars for HIV folk? It is, but at a point when people who were HIV positive needed housing, there was not always housing available for those who were HIV positive. But like Zakia was saying, you know, we take so much of our general operating funds and put them on an event, you know, and no shade, things should be fabulous, things should be, because I did it my first year, you know what I mean? I had unrestricted dollars, and when I had my event at the gala, I wanted to spend, you know, $7,000, $8,000 on decorations when I didn't understand that I really should have put that money up. But one of the other things that we were able to do at Trans Solutions in Indianapolis, we were able to look at foundations that were specifically, they were unrestricted dollars, but we still, and can I say that unrestricted dollars need a budget? Just because they're unrestricted dollars don't mean that you shouldn't put a budget. I mean, for me and my agency and how it works for me, I put a budget for damn near everything so that I can know what I'm spending, how I'm spending it, and is it sustainable the way that I'm spending it? And so sometimes you have to take those dollars and you have to put them up. I'm glad Dwayne joined, you know. I mean, that's the king of non-restricted dollars and putting them in a place that is going to continue to give. But part of our dollars do go to, most of our dollars, let me say this, are unrestricted. I mean, I don't want to say they're unrestricted dollars. They're just not dollars that are attached to HIV. What our focus on in Indianapolis is workforce development. We're a wraparound service to those that are HIV positive. A lot of people that are HIV positive don't understand that the poverty level, as long as they stay below the poverty level, they can still work. So people's lives can be just as full, not just depending on services in certain areas. And in our area, we have the ability to do that. So we do workforce development. We're one of the only centers that have access to a computer lab besides the library where things time out and people aren't able to save their intellectual property. So I think it's just certain different ways when you get your little extra money and stuff, and certainly sometimes we have to survive. We got to pay ourselves. Amen. Pay yourself. Before you get a program, pay yourself so that you can be healthy enough to do the program, because it does take money to do the work. I mean, I want to say that though. I'd be so glad when I see people that is doing the work, buy something and put it on Facebook, or buy or celebrate or get a new designer bag, bitch, or buy a new car, because there's some toxicity to what we say equity looks like. Equity means everybody don't get some at the same time. The people who need it the most get it. So if I get a car because mine broke down, it got to be agency dollars. See, we born in poverty models, and that's why I keep coming back to that. I think, we have to continue to do the work, diversify our funding, not look for funding in the same pot, collaborate with people, and mind our business. If you do that, you're going to be really successful. If you get caught up in somebody else's business, because we know folk ain't doing the work. We see it. That's why our agencies are continuously funded every time we ask for something, because they know that we are doing the work. So I celebrate folks that is doing the work.
Right. And if I can't interject, I want to piggyback. And that's so true, Marissa, what you were talking about. And one major thing that I think other agencies or people at whole needs to look at, we need to look at fundraising, because that is huge for an agency. A lot of time most agencies are dependent on federal, state, local, or some kind of grant to be supplied to the agency. But I think that it is huge to have a good fundraising team. And I know one thing about our agency, we are big on that. We are advocates of fundraising. And when you fundraise, it's able to take your agency to another level with unrestricted dollars to be able to do some of the things that you need to do in these community projects. So I think that's something that everybody should be aware of and kind of focus on. It's almost like we don't always have to wait for somebody to give us something. We have to use the tools that we got to get out into community and make what we want to happen also. That's huge too.
Mr. Crowder, could we get a word from you? Introduce yourself first and give us your pronouns, and then give us a word, please. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dwayne Crowder, Executive Director of A Vision for Hope, located here in Atlanta, Georgia. Pronouns are he and him. Just to piggyback off what Marissa said earlier about creating your own programs, just finding a way to
Dwayne Zakia had said it first. I had piggybacked off her. She had gave me the healing.
So we have to create our own tables in our own spaces, because I remember our first year we were funded for Hopwell dollars, and it just came with so many restrictions before we even got the dollar. Like, we had already spent out $70,000 and had not been reimbursed for $0. But it just comes with so many restrictions and who you can house, who you can't house. So what we did the following year is we did not sign on for the next year. We turned down the contract. And through that way, we were able to create a model for housing that was from a status neutral stance or whatever. Because what we did see was a lot of individuals that we were serving were not necessarily HIV positive, but they fell in those disparities of at risk of becoming HIV positive. So even currently now within our housing model, it's from a status neutral approach. And we have to be able to create the type of programs that benefit our community. And I'm a strong believer in not just applying for an RFP just because I know that we will be a recipient of it. We have to, work diligently for what actually aligns with our mission and our goals, and just not an easy fix all the time.
That's true.
This is what I wanted to say too, really quick, because I am a housing program specialist for organization here in Atlanta, NASM. And it was very difficult a few months ago when we had people that were not positive coming to our agency and not being able to send them to organizations. that would assist them for, not being positive. And so to my sister Zakia's point, what she said earlier, we have to find space in our budget and some type of funding to what Tori was saying with fundraising in order to make sure we have funds available for persons that are not living with HIV. Because people that are not living with HIV are still going through some of the same things as people who are. Because I felt a certain type of way with the stimulus checks when they was giving those out. They had stipulations on those as well. I was like, wow, that is so wow. You have to have this list of criteria things in order to just to be on the receiving end of something. So when do, like we all pretty much can agree here, create space for us, especially here in the South, to be able to say, you know what can we do different? Because at this point, the only status neutral organization I knew at the time was a Vision for Hope. And I would send persons over there. And thank God for Tori and Dwayne being able to help those persons that we were able to send over there. So thank God for that. But just to speak to the ones that we weren't able to help, they were still unhoused. So it's like we have to try to come up with some type of a solution, because everyone, the housing, the homelessness across the nation is just really, really bad.
You know, when Dwayne used the word status neutral, it made me think, like, what are the funders thinking at CDC, or what are the review panels thinking? Because if we're using a status neutral service navigation approach for HIV care and prevention, then why is housing not a status neutral funding opportunity under HIV? So that may be something that, like, you need to have conversations with your health department about, because it really doesn't make sense. And the same social determinants of health that folks living with HIV have, LGBTQ people who are at risk of contracting HIV still have the same disparities. So,
and we answered the first two questions because we just went right into what the second question was going to be. So I don't even have to ask that one because we all covered that. And my third question was, we are living in tumultuous times. You just said it, Zakia, we're living in tumultuous times. Every state is not a asylum or a protector of us. And Florida is not. And, I would feel like a coward packing up and running when I'm a leader for my community. So I'm staying here, I'm standing in the paint, I'm putting together rallies, I'm putting together town halls, I'm putting things together. And my question is, why so much division? We're up under one umbrella when it comes to what is going to take place. As these laws are coming down, they're not gonna say, oh, I know y'all ain't speaking, so I'm gonna let y'all slide, and I'm just gonna get y'all. It's gonna cover everybody. And no, I know we don't have to be best friends. No, you don't have to be best friends with everybody, but you can coexist. And my thing is, why the division?
you asking a question that is probably never ever really gonna ever be answered. There is so much division on so many different levels, and it always has been, and it probably always will be. I think the conversation should be about how we unify folks, how we, like Zahara said, get people to show up, because there isn't going to be change if you don't show up. That's a time when everybody need to be at the table. That's a time when everybody need to be present. And I can only speak for like the work that I've done here in Virginia, but there were really no laws that were really inclusive for us. And so, yeah, the rallies, But like if you have like here we have Equality Virginia, and I think they're all over the place. I think it might be Equality Florida, Equality Georgia. Um, they do a lot of work as far as policy and lawmaking. Like we need to, as community leaders, we need to connect with them, and we need to be present at your state legislature and speaking to those senators and those delegates. And you may not like the things that they say and the stuff that happens, but you got to continue to have that conversation. And everybody needs to show up. And I think the problem with our community is that that's not really a priority. You know, it's more about the club and the pageants and the ballroom scene and who's the cunnest and who's the realest and who got this on, who doing this, but you're not thinking about that it's these white people, these, you know, these folks who are Trump supporters and they're making these decisions for us. So the same way we showing up at the pageant, the same way we flying to Chicago and going to the balls and all of that, we need to be voting. We need to be showing up at the General Assembly so that, or wherever your state legislature is, so that they see that it is a huge population of taxpaying people that they are affecting and to use your voice. Our priorities as a community is all messed up. And I think that that's where the division comes in because it's so much of a crabs in a barrel mentality. Instead of us pooling our resources, pooling our voices, and really, really making a difference. That's how change happened in Virginia. We ain't got to worry about them canceling our drag shows here and coming for all of that foolishness because we are very progressive as a Southern state. There are a lot of laws that are in place, but that came from people showing up and using our voices, voting, being present.
I want to also say
Eh.
too that community is hurting each other. You know, intercommunity violence is really true. That's just what it is. We got to stop hurting each other. And we got to figure out how do we heal and stand together. That's the only way we're going to survive if we stand together. But we are constantly hurting each other so much and be ready to throw each other to the wayside and girl, forget her, I ain't talking to her no more, girl. I see her at her funeral. And most times that is the case.
It is. It is.
Yeah. And I mean, I just wanted to say, in speaking in regards to voting and speaking to your senators and your representatives, even on city and local levels as well. I remember back in 2018, there was a comprehensive ordinance of discrimination that I went and I was speaking for because it was going to ban businesses from discriminating against LGBTQ persons from using the restroom. I remember the restroom was a big thing back then in 2018. And so while it passed overwhelmingly, and I was the only Black trans representative there, because there's no representation of transgender people in Macon, Middle Georgia, that's actually advocating or does any type of activism. It passed overwhelmingly. However, because the mayor was staunch, deep South Republican, decided to veto it after the not only the people who voted you in, but also city council and the commissioners voted for them because they wanted to push the needle forward for us not to be in spaces and be safe. However, the mayor was like, no, he did not believe, and these were his words, he did not believe that Macon was ready for something like that. And so this is why voting is so important and also coming together. And that's been my pitch because I went on sabbatical for about 2 years after a lot of personal things happened. But I've come back and thank God for, Regina and for Tori and for Dwayne and for Marissa and for a lot of people pouring back into me, telling me that you are needed, you are necessary, and getting back out there to do the work. And we have got to come together. And so the past few weekends, I've been traveling up and down the road, sharing and telling everyone, listen, the only way we're going to see any effective change and any resources really happen here where there's absolutely nothing there, is we have got to show up. If you don't want to show up for yourself, show up for your neighbor. Show up for the person that's coming up behind you. So that way it won't be so difficult later on down the road to try to get things and legislations and things like that passed. Because if a person doesn't know how to vote, doesn't know who to vote for, doesn't know how to properly fill out a ballot, an absentee ballot, all of these things, all of that is important. And so holistically, we have to look at more than just, divisiveness is what's tearing us apart. Voting is tearing us apart because if we don't know what we're voting for, we don't know. And if we don't vote, that's part of the problem as well. I just want to put that out there.
Well,
And
no.
you don't have to be best friends. You do not have to be best friends. You do not have to like me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And most of the time, a lot of the energy that is spent on divisiveness, it makes no difference if you like me or if you don't like me. It's not going to stop my. I mean, it sounds good, and not just in the trans community. In any community, you have divisiveness. You have separation. I'm riding with those who want to ride. Either you a hater or you a celebrator. There's no in between in that. If I get if there's an opportunity for a grant to be distributed, I'm gonna send it to everybody. May the best girl win. We all in separate areas. May the best person win. And I also think when we talk about, I think one of the things when Regina talked about, the things that are going on in our community, I think we are so reactive. Zakia was talking about not being reactive, but being proactive. Before we get to the point where they're taking things, what can we do before? But I think even before we get there, me and Zahara was talking earlier, and Zakia just brought it up on the phone call about, most of us have equalities in our area. And a lot of us don't understand, we know what the word advocacy means, but we really don't know how to offer it in an effective way, sometimes in a structured way. Sometimes we don't know about letter writing to our Congress. Sometimes we don't know why we should sign this petition. So before we even get there, I would love to see, and I was talking to Zahar about this earlier, a national project where there is some education around. Before we get to this election that's coming up and we start begging people to go out and vote and stuff, but even before we get there, they're telling people now what bathrooms again. Zakia says it's gonna get bad for us. It is. Now they're telling us again what bathrooms we can use. But a lot of people don't understand. They don't understand until it happens. And then it's a reactive to what has happened. But how do we get proactive? And I think a lot of the proactives is education, just like around research. We always want people to be involved in research, but we don't tell them that the research might not be applicable to your life for 3 to 5 years, but here's why we're collecting it. Here's what it's going to do for you. Here is how it might influence funding. I think education is so key because I think we think, most of us have achieved understanding of where the money is at. We might not have all the staff we need to get the money, but we know the structures of business, thus far. I still think the education part, I think, we so busy taking care of people, pouring into people that we're gonna have to go back to some education. And we have gotten lost around HIV. That's all we talk about is HIV. That's all the money. That's where the biggest dollars is at. So everybody gonna go for those dollars. But if we diversify our fundings again, and I'm gonna encourage everybody on the phone call, everybody listening that has a 501c3 that is looking to build capacity, don't be a crab in the barrel. Get out that barrel and go to another funding stream. Agencies that survive are multi-funding stream. Tori talked about fundraising. If you're not fundraising and building donorship, you are not going to survive with just grant funding. And so it's just different ways to make sure that we're being effective. Because if you're not effective, you're in the way.
I agree.
And I think one quick thing though, I think we talked about a lot of stuff, and that's great. And everybody really has some good ideas on those topics, but I think we also need to link. And when I say linkage, not linkage amongst agencies, but linkage outside of our agencies. Like I know for last year at our summit, we brought people from ballroom, we brought people from pageantry. So we tried to bridge the gap. And I think that's something huge that we have to look at components, right? Because if we don't come together as a community, right, we don't have to always even be on the same accord, but we do have to understand that policy needs to be put in place that will help somebody else. It may not directly help you in the moment, but it may help you a couple years down the line. You know, we hear so many people say, well, I'm not getting married, so a same-sex marriage wouldn't matter to me. And I always take the time out to think of that as, that's crazy. That doesn't make sense to me. Why would you say that? So just because it's something that you don't directly want, you don't want it of your community who wants to advocate for that. So we have to look at bridging that gap amongst our community. That's something huge that we really have to take time out and analyze that. That's all I got with that.
I want to, because I know we got a short time, but I want to amplify Marissa's and it's a Zariah voice that just spoke on the voting, because we are moving into a real pivotal moment in political climate where voting is really critical. And I want to amplify what Marissa was saying. It's like creating something for us all to learn about what that advocacy looks like of getting people out to vote. Even with a recent election here in Chicago, the runoffs for the mayor, the votes were in the minority, I mean, in the majority of millennials. So the votes are now in younger people, young, queer, trans, binary people now. And it is critical for us as agencies and as leaders to figure out how can we make sure that these people are registered, they are voting, and they understand what they are voting for. And, you know, they have not just what we want them to, what they want to, and educating in that. And I want to amplify Marissa and saying that it's like, how can we take away from this call here and draw on something that's bigger for us to really be more intentional of protecting our sisters down in, you know, Florida and down in the southern states and Tennessee and these other areas that are pushing anti-trans legislations across and queer legislations across their regions.
And I want to tell you, Zahara, that touched my heart when you reached out to me, because you were one of the only people that reached out to me and asked me, sister, what can I do? Do you want me to come down there to speak? What do you know? What can I do? That meant the world to me, because you don't get that often. You know, you saw what was going on and you instantly reached out. So that meant the world to me. Oh, I'm about to get emotional. that just did something to me. And that's what I mean when I say division. You don't have to be, we don't have to be best friends. We don't have to run with each other. We don't even have to like each other, but we have to stand for a cause. We have to stand for a cause because our lives depend on it. Our very lives depend on it. And at the end of the day, you can be standing against somebody that you despise, but I don't despise anybody enough to let them die in front of me. So I just think that's the piece that's important. Voting is very important. I'm so sick of hearing it's not gonna matter no way. It matters. It matters. It mattered when Biden got a new seat, because that was one of the biggest turnout of Black voters in America. That was one of the biggest turnouts. It mattered when Barack Obama it mattered, you know, and we made a difference because we came together. That's what we have to do now, but we have to do it fast. We got to do it fast. I wanted to read some of the comments because we have a lot of comments on the up under our live. Dominique Morgan says, how can we offset restricted funds to weaponize general dollars? A good board and a leader has to be able to lean into that budget and amend when it's necessary. Barbie said, that's because the separatist ideologies were created to give everyone a disadvantage. As long as we are fighting in group, we are distracted by the bigger issues. That's true. That's very true. That's part of the division. The stuff we fight about is just what Zakia said. We're fighting, we competing against each other for a ball and a category, who fish and who mug is sitting. Like when people say, girl, you're so pretty. Uh-huh. I don't want to hear how pretty I am when my legislation is trying to erase my very existence. You know, I'm not thinking about how pretty I am, and I'm not thinking about no $20,000 face when we may not even be able to have balls within the next year. That's not what's on the forefront. And so everything that I have been doing, if you look on my page, if you follow my flyers, everything I have been doing has been in effort to empower my community, you know, to bring us together, you know, to bring light to what is really going on, because there's a lot of people that needs to be educated. They really don't even know what's going on. They have no clue. And they don't know that a lot of this is a distraction, and soon it's going to affect them, especially our Black people. They don't know what's coming, but it's coming. And until we wake up and start doing something about this as one, we're in danger, imminent danger.
Just think that us.
Naomi Myers says women should be the priority, especially when it comes to our LGBTQ youth and our Black transgender people. Barbie says, here's the issue with that. You can keep saying something over and over again to a brick. Well, it doesn't mean that the matter will be heard or even resolved. The priority should be from education around policies and education, the constituents about these new laws and policies. That's true. And that's something we've all said. We need to be educated. We need to be having programs where people are educated to speak on these matters. I'm not A1 on politics. So if Marissa is A1 on politics, that's who I want to have come and speak. Anything that I'm not educated on, I'm gonna call somebody else. I don't want to be sounding like an idiot trying to talk about something I'm not educated on. So I don't mind flying a facilitator in that's gonna master it and educate the people that we have sitting. Okay, I think that's all we have as far as the questions and the comments up under here. But at the end of the day, I just feel like we have to start putting together some outlets of what needs to happen next. In Florida, like we have to lean towards the states that have that safety net and ask them, what did y'all do? Like, Zakia, what did y'all do to get to the point where y'all at, where y'all don't have to worry about a lot of the things our state has to worry about?
We got out there, we advocated. Like we worked, that's why I said, like checking in with your Equality Florida, because like I work closely with Equality Virginia. So we get periodic updates about laws that are coming up that affect us in a certain way. They will do a lot of the work to help you educate the people to advocate for themselves, because they have ways that you can click in an email and find out who your senator is. They have pre-templated letters that can go to your senators and delegates. So really like having a really strong relationship with your equality, whatever state that you're in, and then showing up and getting other people to show up. You know, it was real disheartening the very first year we went and we tried to get the Virginia Values Act passed, and like right before it was this bill for a dog. It was called the Tommy Dog Bill. And because this dog had got tied up and set on fire at Abner Clay Park, which is downtown in the city. And so, they immediately passed the bill to protect dogs and make sure nothing happened. And then the next bill was about protecting trans people and their rights, and they immediately shot it down. And so it just, the moments can be hurtful, but we are strong and resilient. So you just have to put on your thick skin. And like, it was many days that I was at the General Assembly talking to delegates and, getting writing letters and getting people to show up, to talk to delegates, or speaking on the floor of a bill and how that bill will affect me as a taxpayer and a business owner, in the Commonwealth. And it's just about being vigilant and showing up. And if you just sitting back and you're not doing nothing, then these people are going to do what they feel are in the best interest of them. Like, no way that DeSantis should be doing all this stuff that he doing. Like, now he messing with Disney. I'm like, this man just off the chain. But that comes from probably people in Florida really not voting because they put the wrong people in charge, the wrong people in power. So it's being present.
If
I
I
had a
can ask,
comment from, go ahead.
if I can ask a question in regards to that, how do we get people, our community and our allies and anyone that is for just the right thing? How do, in regards to us, because I know some people think the right thing is to be against us. So the right thing is to be for us. How do we get people to come out and speak out without having to incentivize people to come out?
I think, well, we had a town hall, and that's a space where we're educating people who we are. We're educating the people on how important it is to vote and to do their homework on who they're voting for, and educating people on who we are as people, trans people. The fact that we go to work every day like they do. We have households just like they do. And because they hear all these crazy things in the world that they don't know. A lot of people have no clue, have never even, a lot of people work every day with trans people. Friends with trans people and have no clue because those people are living stealth. So they work with them.
So how do we
everywhere?
So how do we get the trans girl that works at the McDonald's down the street that doesn't know, that is just completely ignorant to whatever is going on? How do we get her involved in the movement of saying, you know what, I understand you work, but this policy is detrimental to your life, to your very existence? And she's a little leery because if she doesn't show up for work, then she loses her job. So in other ways, how do we get those persons involved in the movement and making their voices heard?
So that's when you get people to write letters to senators. You don't have to show up, but like, and I specifically, like with Equality Virginia, we email stuff. So there's a trace of what was said, because you could say the mail got lost, but Equality Virginia sets up things so that it's just a click button. You put your zip code in, it finds out who your senator and your delegate is and your congressman, all of that. And then they say, want to send a letter, and it's already a pre-templated letter speaking about the bill and how you oppose it, and you just put in your name and your address. So it's not even about if they feel some type of way about being trans and going there. They don't know you trans on a piece of paper, but that's you using your voice. So that's a way that they can show up and be active. But also, like, taking opportunities in your support groups, your moments with your clients where you may be talking to them about everything else. Dig in about the importance. Are you voting? Are you registered to vote? Maybe offering that service in your agency, registering people to vote, to make sure. One year we had the RVs. We have RVs that are mobile units. But when we did it the year that Barack was in office, we had the RVs picking people up and taking people to vote. So it's about just showing up how you can and advocating where you can.
Thank you for sharing that, because a lot of times a lot of people feel like they have to show up in order to be heard. So thank you for sharing that.
I just want to say, I want to just tell you all, I appreciate you all tonight. I appreciate you coming here. I wanted you ladies on this forum because each of you have a powerful presence in the community. Each of you are doing the work, and I just wanted to, this is what I wanted. I wanted to create this conversation. So not only are we teaching the masses, but what I'm learning, you know, for myself. And so we all have been able to, you know, look at things from different perspectives. So I thank you. I'm so respectful of your time. So I'm not gonna, you know, try to hold you. But thank you all. I truly appreciate you all taking the time to be here tonight. I love you. And if anybody wanted to say anything before we leave off, you're more than welcome. I just have to leave, Zahara. I love you.
All right, love you more, Sister Bye. Thank you all for sharing space.
Thank you.
Y'all, bye.
Love you, Sister Tori.
Like, thank you all for allowing Vision the opportunity to be on this call. We look forward to working with everybody and just building and trying to bridge the gaps of the community.
Love you, Tarina, Zakia.
I love you more, sisters.
I love you all more.
Did you
Thank
want to
you.
say something, Zakia?
Oh, I was just saying that I love each and every one of you. Continue to keep your head up, continue to do great things, and enjoy your Easter weekend.
Yes, enjoy.
Thank you.
I just
Dwayne,
wanna
would you
say-
like
guys
to say
soon.
something too before we close out?
Well, I saw through the whole call and it was sister this and you ladies this. So thank you for acknowledging me, Regina.
Oh, Naomi.
I was not. I apologize, Dwayne. That's not.
I
Naomi,
enjoyed
please.
sharing the space.
We love
even
you,
with-
brother.
Love you too. So have a nice weekend. Be safe. And Tarina, congratulations on your new location.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And again, I do this from the bottom of my heart. I don't need a grant. I just do it. But I need all the money I can get.
Say, girl, you need a grant. We all need grants.
I know we all need it, but you know, we do it from the kindness of our heart. We have the passion for it. So, you know.
And I am not going to be there, but if you are in Atlanta this Friday, please stop by Best Friends. They are the hottest spot in Atlanta.
We're talking about trans right now.
We're talking actually she's speaking about unrestricted dollars.
Yeah.
Unrestricted.
You better speak, Marissa. Go ahead, Marissa, and finish what you were saying.
It's one of the hottest
Actually,
spots. one
she's
of the
talking
safest
about
spots.
diversified funds. But
Especially when a lot of those funds affect the trans community. Serena, that's when we come to being united.
Correct.
Vision for Hope is definitely one of those organizations that is standing with and for us as trans women. So I definitely support them 24/7, and I represent them and I call their names. Nation, I call your name. Nation is very close to me because that's my ex-lover and Zakia's dream and baby. And so that's why me and Zakia will always be.
Well, those are two people that I look up to most definitely. So I call them all the time. So look, I'm just kicking the bobo, and I'm just playing.
Look,
But you
wait a minute. Look, let me clarify, because the way Natalia said that was like
it sounded like you were her lover.
No, I wasn't her lover.
No, my lover.
My cousin was her lover.
No, it was my lover. My lover. Dwayne Williams was my man.
And a lot of lovers.
But I love you, ladies. Y'all have a beautiful night.
Good night.
See
and gentlemen.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, gentlemen.
Gentlemen.
Dwayne, he said, and gentlemen.
Gentlemen. Good night to my fabulous nephew, Dwayne Crowder. And thank you for all that you do, my love.
See y'all. All right, sister.